Welcome, everyone, to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. As a communication coach, trainer, speaker, and author, I'm delighted to be your host and excited to bring you insights and ideas to help you solve your communication conundrums. This is the 23rd episode of my show, Partner Up with Amy Carroll. If you want to find out more about me or what the show is about, feel free to listen to previous episodes on my website, carrollcoaching.com or the voiceamerica.com business channel. And be sure to download the app or on any of your favorite devices for listening to your apps. If you missed last week's show, I interviewed fellow improviser Vicky Lazar. We discussed how improvisational exercises, which make performers successful on stage, help business professionals to develop multiple skills. And those skills range greatly. Here are some examples: building creativity, greater collaboration, a willingness to take risks, increasing psychological safety, developing flexible leadership. So if that piques your curiosity, be sure to check out that episode from January 29th, For the Love of Improv. And you may even discover a little known fact about a kangaroo from Trenton. Now, today I'm flying solo. And so I was thinking, what would I be inspired to talk about? And what came up for me was the topic of self-confidence. This is something that comes up a lot with my clients. And so we're going to be talking about how to boost and build your confidence in 2021 and beyond. And I'll be sharing some of my own experiences and challenges with self-confidence over the course of mostly my business career and what I did to increase it. I'll also, and this may be even particularly interesting for you, I'll be sharing 3 short audio interviews I did with clients, which I believe will offer you some inspiration and perhaps roadmaps for raising your own self-confidence. Now, what I did first was, because some of the terms that come up for people when they're feeling they're lacking self-confidence is, I feel like an imposter, or I feel like a fraud. So let's start with the concept of imposter syndrome. Wikipedia defines imposter syndrome as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments, and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. I'm wondering if that rings any bells for people listening. Yep. Pretty much everyone I know has experienced at some point imposter syndrome. So you're not alone. In my opinion and experience, the imposter syndrome surfaces whenever I'm taking on a new challenge. Whether it's the first time I've coached a senior leader, or the first time I was a master of ceremonies for a multinational client's annual event, or the first time I hosted this radio show. And I've seen the same pattern repeat itself with many friends and colleagues, whether they transitioned into a new career, or they got a promotion, or even starting a new relationship. One of the typical areas I focus on with my clients is public speaking. So this is riddled with people feeling like imposters. And what I'd like to do now is play a short audio recording, an interview I did with the client of mine, Angelos, a couple of years ago. Listen in as Angelos explains how confidence brings trust and trust brings results. Welcome, Angelos. Great to have you on the call today.
Good evening, Amy. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Pleasure. And now, you and I met in July when I was doing this half-day workshop because you were preparing for a TEDx talk that took place last month, right?
That's right. And I would like to thank you very much for this amazing training that we had together.
Pleasure.
Because I really managed to see all the effects of this training on stage.
Okay, tell us.
Yeah, of course. The first thing that I managed to implement and was very important was that I managed to keep my feet grounded on the stage.
Bravo.
Demonstrating, that I have the right confidence to address my audience by looking them with very good eye contact without doing any eye scanning as I used to do in the beginning.
Okay, so the confident planting your feet and holding eye contact has increased your ability to project more confidence.
Absolutely. And feel that I am able to captivate my audience at the end of the day. Yeah.
Excellent.
And do you remember probably the issue that I had with my voice, that I was afraid of raising the sound of it? Yeah.
Yeah. You were very hesitant to speak loud.
Exactly. I was very hesitant to do it. After working a lot during the session, I managed to keep the optimum level of sound during the session. And that helped me a lot to be able to pass the right messages with the right feelings to the audience.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations. And now, does it feel still uncomfortable or awkward to speak with a loud volume, or does it feel more natural?
No, now it is really more natural. Probably you really already understand it. It changes a lot after taking into consideration your guidelines and practicing and rehearsal. This becomes like a new habit that you're keeping in everyday communication.
And Angelos, do you have a sense of how long it took you to get from the point where it was uncomfortable to now it feeling natural?
I think this entire journey for the TEDx preparation helped me. If I should put it into a timeline, I could say that 1 month time of rehearsing and practicing. Of course, it is still a live process that every time you find opportunities and you find issues to cases to improve.
Got it. And in that 1 month time, how often were you practicing during the week?
Daily. I was practicing daily, and in any case, like walking and talking on your own, the most important thing was also bringing the talk to some people that you feel comfortable with and that you can be vulnerable, that you're not afraid of being exposed, in order to see how the thing changes when you have an audience, because it is very different.
Sure, that makes sense.
So, yes, confidence brings trust, and trust brings results. So
wow. Congratulations. That's really well said, because that's the bottom line in the end, is getting results.
Exactly. This is what we are evaluated every day at.
And Angelos, before I let you go, I have one last question for you. What is one tip that you have for listeners to be a more powerful presenter?
Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Rehearse at any time and at any place. This is my only advice.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Angelos. So, you know, for me, it was what struck me listening to that interview again was how simple it is. He did really concrete, really specific things, grounding his feet, gluing them to the stage, his eye contact, and as a way to engage the audience. And then most of all, especially, which was huge for Angelos, was his volume of his voice. Because when we speak louder, the general tendency is we sound more confident. And what we heard from him, okay, this is going to be a theme, folks. So you're going to be hearing this again about rehearsing and practicing. Here's a story of the first time I was coaching a senior leader. I had traveled to Paris with my colleague because we were co-coaching this guy. In fact, as my colleague, Robbie, we used the strategy of working together early on in our careers several times. And it was just this great strategy for managing our nervousness. It was just good to have a partner in crime as a way to settle our nerves. Though the morning of our first coaching session, we had scheduled to start very early because, you know, this is a busy guy. So I think the session was starting at 6:30 in the morning. Here's the bad news. I've never been a morning person. And unfortunately, I did not set my alarm correctly. Yeah, you can see where this is heading, right? I happened to wake up by chance, checking the time, and discovering that I had approximately 7 minutes to get dressed and meet my colleague in the conference room for the first coaching session with this very intimidating senior leader. And what fascinated me the most was what happened to my brain. I walked over to my suitcase to get dressed, and I looked inside my suitcase, And I knew there was some item that I needed to put on my feet, except I couldn't think of the word for socks. And I guess my brain was so stressed is because I couldn't think of the word, I couldn't even find the item. The stress overwhelmed my brain so much that the normal functioning just ceased. The thing is, if that had happened to me after several years of being a coach, let's say, wasn't one of my first coaching contracts, wasn't early in my career, I don't think my brain would have had such an intense reaction. Remember the definition from Wikipedia? Psychological impact. Sure, I would have been stressed about being late, though a lot of my fear was generated because I was new to coaching. And I remember having this thought, oh my God, I'm late. And now he's going to know I'm a fraud. Like somehow being late, because you feel, oh, I'm not professional. I must not know what I'm doing. Now, happily, we ended up working with this guy for, I think, about 3 years. And after a good 4, 6 months, we were able to laugh about this with him. Now, another time when the imposter syndrome reared its ugly head was about 12 years ago, when I was asked to be the master of ceremonies for my multinational client's annual event. I had never emceed an event before, and I always wanted to. This was an all-day event taking place in Istanbul with one speaker after another, and we had about, I think, 100 people in the audience. In order to prepare for it, I did some research, and I got some guidance from a number of experienced MCs. One of those experienced MCs was my brother, Kevin. He gave me great suggestions and tips, though I remained anxious nonetheless. And I remember him saying, Amy, really, honestly, it's not that difficult. You'll be fine. And yet that didn't seem to be enough to calm my fears. I wanted to believe Kevin. Problem is, I had no evidence that I would be successful. So the day came and went. It was stressful. I felt anxious and definitely felt like an imposter throughout the event. The good news, along with the learning and the advice from others, I applied my own coaching advice, which was act as if. I had to remind myself, Amy, no one knows what's going on inside your head. And as long as you don't show them what's happening going on and happening in the inside, all they have to go on is what they're seeing on the outside. So act as if you're an experienced master of ceremonies. So what this meant specifically was keep my body calm, keep my voice strong, have a warm smile, direct eye contact, and just deal with the next thing in front of me. So so my brain wouldn't be racing, that's what I did. Stay focused on just the next thing. And miracle of miracles, it was a big success. And they were delighted with me. Amazingly, my brother Kevin was right. It technically wasn't that hard. It was just all the stress of the unknown. As a result, the MC gig I did was pure delight. And I have done multiple ones since then, and it's each time. It doesn't mean they haven't been without error or mistake, though I haven't had the same level of stress and anxiety of, they'll think I'm a fraud. I guess like many of us, you've experienced multiple moments of imposter syndrome over the last 10 to 12 months, perhaps. Could be stepping into the role of homeschooling teacher while simultaneously managing new technology, all the while having to appear calm, cool, and collected. Yeah, give me a shout out if you're hearing that bell ring. Now, if your confidence didn't waver with all those unplanned changes and challenges, congratulations, this is rare indeed. It could be due to your regularly practicing and adaptive thinking and behavior when dealing with the unexpected. Improv, anyone? Mm-hmm. For the rest of us, it may have felt like a bit of a shit show. So, whenever we're learning a new skill, there's always going to be a learning curve. So, if you're like you want an injection of confidence while ejecting your inner imposter, I'm going to offer you some suggestions. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'll go through this I'm going to call it a 3.5 step process. And you'll see how you can boost your own confidence. All right, stay tuned. Be back shortly. Welcome back to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. Okay, so you ready for this injection of confidence? Step 1, you want to accept the reality. Whenever we're faced with a new skill or something we've never done before, we'll most likely feel like an imposter or fraud. There's pretty much no way of getting out of this. And that could happen the first, second, or third time you're doing that skill. Like even for me, for this radio show, one of the things that helped me, I started the radio show last September in 2020. And before that, I started doing Facebook Lives. Now, I don't know if you've ever done a Facebook Live. If you're used to a live audience, face to face, or even virtual, you feel like you're just talking to a black hole. It was a disaster. It was a nightmare the first and second time I did it. And already by the third time, I think partly because I was more prepared for it and I had taken some things into consideration, it was already that much easier. And as a result, it's made doing this radio show easier, though the imposter syndrome comes back a little bit, like when I'm doing these solo shows, when I don't have someone else to interview and banter with. So it's still a little bit of that, oh yeah, there's a black hole out there. You just feel like you're just talking to yourself pretty much. And so by rehearsing and practicing and doing multiple times the Facebook Lives, that's already helped me to feel more chilled out. Not 100% yet, getting there. Okay, so this acceptance will help to relax the judging, self-critical part of your brain. And when you do that, the result is you induce self-empathy. And when we're calmer, so when I was preparing for today's solo show, I'm reminding myself, oh yeah, Amy, it's going to be perhaps going to be more intense, more stressful. And I had some strategies for rehearsing and reviewing some notes and such. So that helped me to just chill out. And I also use the improv approach of something I'm going to talk about next. Step 2, and this is where it's part A and part B. So part A, step 2 is when possible, practice the new skills with the intention to fail miserably. I know that doesn't seem like it doesn't really make sense. Do it in low stress, low stakes situations. And then the second part of this is when you've made the mistake, dig yourself out of the failure right in the moment. The tendency is to stop and replay it until it's perfect. Don't do that. That's a different type of practice rehearsal. That's fine. Though what we want you to do is you want to force yourself to deal with the mistake as if you're dealing with it in real life. And the purpose is twofold. One, you get comfortable with failure. I'm not saying you're going to love it, though you're going to get comfortable with it, and you're developing your resiliency and your skills under pressure. So there is a game in improv called Change. In fact, on the episode from January 29th, where I interviewed Vicky, we did this game called Change. And I started off telling a story, and every so often she'd yell, change. And so maybe I had to change the location or the name of someone or what the activity was they were doing. I never knew when she was going to say change, so I couldn't prepare in any way. So I had to have a very flexible attitude. So you can play this game with friends, family, car trips, whenever you're bored. And what you'll be doing as a benefit is developing that resiliency and that flexibility and that ability to manage things that are being thrown at you that might be unexpected. Step 3, revisit both the successes and failures and apply Marshall Goldsmith's feed forward model. So this is a guy who's a leadership coach. And if you want to, you can go on my website and find the 2-minute video that I did about his feed forward model. And that's carrollcoaching.com. Though I'll tell you right now what it is. So if you have a pen, you can write this down and you'll be able to remember it. Part 1 is what worked well. And then part 2 is even more effective when. So let's say you were rehearsing a presentation, and now with Zoom, you can, hit the record button and you got a video, boom, bada bing, bada boom, right there. And you can get even more input if you're willing to and brave to do it, because it's kind of intimidating. And you very clearly just identify, well, what did I do that worked well? Oh, I was smiling when I was looking at the audience. I explained the concept in a very crisp and concise manner. All right, so you identify all things that are working well, because you got to spend your time doing that, because that's also important for the confidence. And then you ask yourself, what can I do to be even more effective next time? Notice you didn't say what went wrong or what was a mistake. What can I do to be even more effective next time? So this is getting your brain in that forward motion. This will reinforce what's working and identify what to do differently in the future. So that is Marshall Goldsmith's feed forward model, which I highly recommend. Practicing these steps will enable you to reclaim and strengthen your confidence. So you'll be better prepared for the unseen and for new challenges going forward. All right, what I want to do now is play for you the second audio clip. And this one's called Confidence Rising with Giorgio. So listen in as Giorgio talks about how he identifies and practices his skills to be even more effective and increase his confidence in how he's showing up. Welcome, Giorgio.
Hello, Amy. How are you?
I'm good. Great to have you on the podcast today.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Giorgio, I know that you've shared with me in the past successes you've had applying some of the skills that you were working on during the Leadership Presence course. I wonder if you'd be willing to share some of those practice skills that you've been moving to mastery.
Yes, Amy. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. First, I would like to say that the coaching sessions we had with you were really eye-opening in terms of allowing me to note some leadership behaviors that I realize really make a difference when, for example, presenting to public.
Cool. So give me some details.
Yes, I realize on myself first that, for example, I was not necessarily using the best posture when presenting. I used to have a pace of speaking that was too fast in some cases.
Yep.
And I was using a lot what is called the filler sound. So
the famous filler sound.
Making the sound between words.
Right.
That was probably coming from trying to speak too fast. So after going through the coaching sessions with you and realizing how these behaviors could have been improved, I start practicing myself, and I also starting to note other speakers.
Right.
Where we're applying these behaviors.
Okay, so
and I realized.
Thanks for letting me interrupt you. Let's break it down. You said you realized something. Let's talk about the posture. What did you realize about the posture?
I realized that I was first in looking at others presenting, for example, I realized that people who were standing with, for example, the arms lining at the sides of the body.
So relax at the sides instead of in front of them.
Yes, they appeared as more in control of the stage, of the presentation, of what they were saying, comparing to other people who were using the hands, the arms, and moving the body more.
Ineffective way?
Yes.
Got it.
So I that helped me also realizing how I could have practiced more. I started to do it, and I have to say that I feel now more comfortable in using that posture when presenting compared to what I used to feel some weeks ago.
Okay, so you're telling me that you were literally practicing keeping your hands to the sides in different circumstances.
I did. I
Good.
did
Okay.
in very normal daily situations like waiting for the train, for example.
Uh-huh. Oh, and when else would you practice this?
While presenting, actually, when speaking
Okay.
with others. So in the real situation, or even in speaking in a more informal manner with colleagues or friends.
Uh-huh.
Until I felt that I was much more comfortable. I was probably not even realizing in some cases that I was assuming that posture. So it was not something that I was imposing, but I was feeling more natural for me.
So you're saying that after you moved it to a level of mastery where you could keep your hands at your sides, whether it was a formal presentation or just talking with friends socially, you actually felt more comfortable than before. Did I get that
Yes,
right?
completely right. I realized that in some cases I was feeling more comfortable in having that posture than how I used to feel before when I was assuming other postures.
Amazing.
It made me feel more as an owner and confident with
Ah.
what I was doing in that situation.
That's so cool to hear that. So now I know that people listening are now wondering, okay, how long did it take you? So how frequently did you practice and over what period of time did you practice?
Yes, it
Before,
was not immediate.
yeah, okay, before it became mastery. So that's the level of measure. So how much time would you say?
As I said, it was not immediate, I have to say. It
Right.
took me some weeks, something between 1 and 2 months,
Okay.
to move from feeling completely uncomfortable in doing it until I felt that I can do it in a normal situation without feeling any embarrassment, any sense of being uncomfortable with the posture.
Got it. So you explain situations you practiced in formal presentations while waiting for the train, talking to friends socially. How many times a day or how many minutes a day do you think you were practicing?
Every time that I had the opportunity to, and I realized that was the opportunity to practice. So something between 1, 2 times per day until probably 5, 6, 10 times per day. It was
Wow.
not really planned to do it. I was trying to capture any situation where I could have done and could have practiced that.
Got it. And now I know you also said that you were working on pace and the speed you're speaking as well as getting rid of filler sounds. Tell me about those practices.
Yes, Amy. So the process was exactly the same. I realized how these behaviors could have been improved while we were doing the coaching sessions together. Then I also started to note these behaviors in other people
Mm.
while they were speaking or presenting in a more or less formal situation. And I realized also in that case that I was feeling that the people who were using these behaviors appear as more comfortable, as more solid, as more owner and confident with what they were saying with the situation.
Brilliant.
So that became an additional incentive for me to practicing either in less formal situations, for example, in speaking with colleagues in the office, as
Yep.
well as in more formal situations when I had to present. So I felt that there was a process of learning and improvement really happening in the last months since the coaching sessions.
Oh, that's great to hear, Giorgio. Congratulations. What I'm hearing,
Thank you.
one of the huge benefits that you're walking away with is this sense of increased confidence in yourself and the way you're showing up.
Yes, absolutely. And I try to convey this confidence as I feel confidence in leaders who use these behaviors themselves.
Right. You see it modeled and you think if it's working for them, it's going to be working for me.
That's the hope and the belief. Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Giorgio, before I let you go, I have one question.
Please.
I'd like you to give the listeners one tip or suggestion that you've discovered for stepping into partner. What would you recommend to the listeners?
Practicing and don't feeling that the initial sense of feeling uncomfortable because you are doing something new is an obstacle to put in practice the behaviors, because by practicing them I realized that it is much more natural than what I thought initially.
Okay, so be willing to allow yourself to be in that discomfort until you can move it to a level of mastery, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, it's the step necessary to get to that level,
right,
if you are not there yet.
And Giorgio, I know that before I started recording our discussion, you and I were talking about the downward inflection, that you're still working on that. So a gift I would like to give you is to check out newsletter number 42 on my website. And this is a whole newsletter dedicated specifically to mastering the downward inflection. So hopefully that will support you and other listeners.
Okay, perfect. I will certainly look at the newsletter. You probably realize while we were speaking that there is still space for improvement in that sense. I'm motivated. I'm confident that by practicing, I may be able to improve this behavior as well.
Brilliant. Giorgio, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me, Amy, for the discussion.
Welcome back to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. That last audio interview you heard with Giorgio was done a couple of years back. And Giorgio is just this lovely gentleman I got to work with. And one of the things that he struggled with, that he talked about in the audio recording, that many clients struggle with, is this thing called the downward inflection. This is when your voice, well, let me give you the opposite explanation. The opposite is doing the upward inflection. So it sounds like everything is a question. So if I was introducing myself, I might sound like this. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Carroll. I'm a coach and trainer. And you're thinking, I don't know, sweetheart, are you? So this is one of the fastest ways for us to sabotage our credibility, is using too much of this upward inflection. Now, a little side note, people do it because they want to sound approachable and friendly, except many people overdo it. And Giorgio, being a really nice guy, used to overdo it. So he's still working on that, or he was at the time. I should call him and find out how he's doing. Spot check coaching. And if you want to know more about this, there's a couple of ways that you can hear about it. You can go to my website and check out newsletter number 42, where I talk about it in much more detail. I give some examples, and there's some interesting videos to watch that are not they don't include me. And then there's a podcast I did demonstrating the downward inflection. I can't remember which number the podcast is, so just look for the title that says downward inflection, and then you can hear me doing it some more. So the next thing I want to tell you about is this. A recommendation I have is a book from Susan Jeffers. So Susan Jeffers wrote this book that I think it's pretty famous. A lot of people know it. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And I'm going to read for you a couple of things from her book that I found really inspiring. And here's one of them: is that every time you encounter something that forces you to handle it, your self-esteem is raised considerably. You learn to trust that you will survive no matter what happens. And in this way, your fears are diminished immeasurably. And that, before I read some bits from Susan's book, that connects to me about this very movie from years ago with George Clooney called We Three Kings. I think it was Desert Storm. And he's sending out this guy to the battlefield who's probably barely 18 years old and maybe has not had a lot of exposure in life and been a bit sheltered. And the kid is a nervous wreck. And George Clooney says to the kid, he says something like, "You're scared, aren't you, kid?" And the kid goes, yeah, I am. And the kid's like, oh, great. I'm going to get a pep talk from George Clooney. This will be just what I need. And George Clooney's character says, well, something like, well, tough, because you got to go out there and fight before you get the confidence, kid. Confidence comes later. And for me, that is so telling, because so many people, many of my clients, they want the confidence first, and then they'll do the scary thing, except really that doesn't count because it's not so scary because you've got the confidence. So the whole idea is this willingness to be scared, this willingness to hold the fear and the discomfort while still doing that challenging thing. So some inspiration from Susan. Let's see, page 22. The fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. Oh, great. Because one of my things that I get inspiration with in life is to always keep growing and learning. So now I'm thinking, oh, right. Okay. So if that's the case, then I have to accept the fact that I will always be out of my comfort zone. And then the next one is this. I suggest that each day you do something that widens your space for you. Call someone you're intimidated to call. Buy a pair of shoes that cost more than you would ever pay in the past, as long as you have the budget. Ask for something you want that you've been too frightened to ask for. Take a risk a day, every day. One small, bold stroke that will make you feel great once you've done it. Even if it doesn't work out, that you don't get what you wanted to, at least you tried. At least you practice. You didn't sit back. You weren't powerless. Watch what starts to happen when you expand your comfort zone. So this is one of the things I do regularly is I look for scary things, whether it's talking to a stranger in French on the train, because sometimes that feels intimidating for me. Or let's see, what was something I did. I asked somebody, this woman sitting next to me, if she'd like to have a meal together, a couple of back before COVID, so looking for these little opportunities to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone. And I want to now take a moment to play for you the third recording. This is with Agnieszka. And Agnieszka, well, I'm going to let it speak for itself. She pulled it all together. So let's see what she has to say about the benefit of practicing on a regular basis, these skills. Welcome, Agnieszka. Great to have you back on the podcast.
Hello, Amy. Hello, everybody. Good to be here with you again.
Now, I know that a few months ago when we spoke, you had a great partner in action story, something where you used the skills during a job interview and you were very successful. And today that you have, I think you told me you have a personal partner success story you wanted to share.
Indeed, I do.
Okay, let's hear it.
I have 2 kids. I have a daughter who's 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
And I have a son who's 6 years old.
Okay.
My daughter is a very talkative daughter. Just entering a teenager age.
Okay.
The story I'm going to tell is about how I use the partner techniques when dealing with my daughter,
mm-hmm.
and how I'm teaching her to use consciously some of these techniques. My daughter likes to speak about her adventures, about her life, and about her school and her friends.
Okay.
When she starts speaking, it's difficult to stop her. Some time ago, I started to use the partner techniques to make her stop and notice the outside world.
Okay, so walk me through this. So she's busy, coming home from school at the end of the day. She's all animated, telling you about her day. And what was like that in the past? I can imagine it's the end of your long work day, and that's kind of exhausting for you. How did you used to handle it?
I usually listened to her for some time. Then I listened for another time. Then I stopped, still pretending I'm listening.
Oh, yes.
Then I started to speak to her, usually in a higher voice.
So you would be listening silently, passively, mustering up all sorts of patients that you could find at the end of a day.
Yes.
Indeed. And then what would you say?
My dear, I understand. This is very interesting. It's too long. Please make it shorter. Or let your brother speak. Let your brother speak. He also has a good story from his school.
And how did she receive that when you would say that?
She didn't listen to me. She kept talking or was saying that it's so important she has to say it.
Oh, goodness.
Otherwise she will potentially die.
I think I've lived through that stage, yes.
It was very challenging. And I was looking for a way to make her aware that this is very annoying for the environment. I put my attention 100% on her.
Okay.
I speak slowly. I pause. And I use the downward inflection. I usually ask her to stop. Tell her that it's very interesting. I would like her to make it shorter and more concise.
Okay, so you're essentially doing the same, you're saying the same thing you said before, acknowledging it's interesting, and then making a request for it be more concise, except what I'm hearing is you're packaging it differently. Mentally, you're fully engaged with her. I'm guessing you're also using that, you're showing non-verbally with eye contact. Maybe, are you using active listening when she's speaking?
Indeed.
Okay. Okay. And then when you make your request, you're modeling it with this pausing, slow, calm, downward inflection.
Yes, that's what I do.
Different than in the past, it would have been more agitated. Is that correct?
Yes. And I wasn't using these active listening techniques as much as I do right now.
Got it.
So the message I'm sending is, I love you, my daughter. You have my attention. I'm all for you now.
Yeah.
But I would like you to understand something.
And I'm sure you didn't say but. I'm sure you said and.
Of course I did. And. Right.
So what response did you get from her?
She stops. She notices something has changed. She doesn't understand yet what it is, but she's responding to it. She's noticing it is different.
And does she seem upset when she stops, or does she ask you questions?
She questions. That's the best part of this story. She doesn't feel bad about it. She doesn't feel upset. She doesn't feel offended.
Wow.
She feels that I'm still there for her. Something changed. And she wants to understand what changed, why. And I'm also adding my part of how I changed it.
Okay, so you are shifting your behaviors. Your daughter is noticing and stepping into a place of curiosity, and then you take that as a teaching moment to explain to her the things you're doing differently.
Indeed.
Brilliant.
I explain what I'm doing, that I'm pausing, that I'm using the right inflection, that I'm speaking slowly and using less words.
So I have a couple of questions for you, Agnieszka. How long does it take for you, between the time you notice she's being talkative, you start to use the skills, and then she responds?
It's a couple of seconds.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing.
I start using it. She notices that something changed. She stops, asks questions, and then I take the time to explain her that this is the technique, why I'm doing it, how I'm doing it, and what is the benefit.
Fantastic.
I give her this lesson to give her tools that she can use in her environment, in her social life, with her friends, at her school, and make her aware that these things matter and they do have influence. I'm doing it with a life example.
And I love the generosity and that desire to pass on these skills to her at such an early age, because when I give trainings, very frequently people in the room who are parents say, we should teach these skills to our children in school. Why isn't this not taught in school? And I unfortunately don't have an answer for that yet, though I am delighted to hear that you are sharing it with the people who are most important in your life. Well done.
Thank you. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm exactly doing.
Well, Agnieszka, thank you so much for coming in today. Before I let you go, though, I have one question for you. What is a tip or suggestion that you would give to listeners for stepping into partner?
Don't be afraid to experiment with changing your behavior.
And you know what? Experiment also means that sometimes you're going to fail.
Indeed.
And unfortunately, as we know from many great people in history, that failure eventually will lead to success many of the times. And I can really appreciate that, the importance of that, to be brave, to know that it's going to feel scary sometimes, and to go out there and do it anyway, because eventually success does come.
You're absolutely right.
So for me, something that I found very interesting, and I think that Susan Jeffers also talks about this, is the importance of asking for feedback from others. You can give them that feed forward formula from Marshall Goldsmith, what worked well, even more effective when. It makes it easier for them to give you specific feedback. And when you practice consistently, you increase your skills. When you're practicing, you enable you to reclaim and strengthen your confidence. So you'll be better prepared for unforeseen and new challenges going forward. And when you take on your next challenge, maybe that imposter may reappear. So now you don't have to panic, because you know it might appear and you know what to do and how to handle it. Now, my call for action over between now and the next couple of days, I'm going to encourage you to send me your communication conundrums, clashes, challenges, mishaps, blunders, and successes. You can do that via email. And that way I will have them, I'll be able to share them on air and perhaps discuss them and give input and suggestions. And this is the thing, we can also learn from your successes. So maybe you've got something that you're feeling like a fraud about and you decide to tackle it. Be sure to let me know about it, because I'd love to hear what you did and to share your success with listeners. If you're game for it, I'm going to be hopping over to Facebook Live 5 minutes past the hour for a short chat from today's show. Feel free to connect with me there and also on any of my social media channels, Amy Carroll Coaching. And again, check out my website, carrollcoaching.com. That's 2 R's and 2 L's. And you're going to be able to get access to the newsletters there, to the videos and other resources to help you boost your confidence going forward in 2021 and beyond. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. You've been listening to Partner Up with Amy Carroll on the Voice America Business Channel. Be sure to tune in next week. And in the meantime, happy partnering, everyone.